What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about Xbox because it has now been officially an entire year since the approval of the Activision Blizzard deal. Now, if you'll remember just a bit ago, this was a time of pure celebration from Xbox and a lot of Xbox fans. In fact, I'm not going to name any names, but there were actually a lot of Xbox podcasters that were having actual parties, having victory streams, putting on suits and saying, now is the death of PlayStation. And I'm not even faulting their hype, their excitement for Xbox to finally make a comeback. But now, just 1 year later, Xbox is pretty much dead. The console's not selling, Game Pass subscriptions are in the toilet, and even the biggest Xbox exclusives are now coming to PlayStation. But let's talk about this deal, because I do truly believe, in my heart of hearts, that the Activision Blizzard deal is the death of Xbox, and I don't think anybody could have predicted this, but let's get into it. Hi, hope you're having a great day, and if you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, I do think this deal in general on paper initially did seem like a big shakeup. There had never been an acquisition of this size pretty much ever. There had been like corporate mergers, but Xbox purchased them for $77 billion after a very extended and very messy court case. Now, I made a lot of videos about that case as it was unfolding because I just didn't truly believe this would happen. It just seemed impossible to think of Microsoft completely consuming a company as big as Activision Blizzard. I mean, this is literally tens of thousands of employees, but I was also curious as to how this was going to work, how you're going to merge two companies that are so gargantuan into a single entity. And I guess it turns out that it wasn't. This entire merger seems to have, if anything, completely tainted Xbox and messed up Activision Blizzard. A lot of people are saying, worst deal in gaming? They haven't done anything. How'd this disaster turn out, Xbox fans? I was actually shocked to see that pretty much everybody is talking about how bad this has been. Even from a job loss perspective, they've canceled projects. But let's actually go from that. Even stuff like this, 1 year from now, Xbox will be dead. Some people are being like, oh, PlayStation fanboys are still crying. I don't think any PlayStation fanboy is crying about this, because it's interesting that every Activision Blizzard game you might actually like is still on PlayStation. You're not really losing anything out. But people are kind of just discussing the fact that the Xbox has found itself in a very bleak position. During the court case, a lot of weird stuff that Microsoft said became very public. Like, one of the things that Microsoft said essentially is that Xbox sucks. They, under oath on the stand, repeatedly had executives and high-ups and people actually in control of Xbox say, we can't keep up, we can't compete, we don't know how to sell Xbox, we're so far behind PlayStation, we'll never possibly catch up, and that's why we should be allowed to buy this, because it will finally create a fair market. And I almost feel like that lack of hype directly from Xbox has bled into the fan base. It feels like even when they do announce new stuff, like right as I started filming this, they announced they're doing a Xbox partner preview on Thursday, and it seems like a lot of people are kind of just so blah. It feels like there is no longer that crisp excitement. I've always been a big believer that the strongest marketing position that a lot of Xbox stuff had, from their games to Game Pass or even from the fan base, was that kind of underdog element to it. There's a lot of psychology about how people love to cheer on the underdog. I mean, it's a lot of our stories. It's David versus Goliath. It's always that cool idea of the person that works harder, who gets lucky, beats the person that's already ahead. And I always felt like a lot of Xbox fanboys liked the idea of the Activision Blizzard deal, because it was, okay, now we finally have a rock in our sling. We can slay Goliath. We can actually keep up with PlayStation, at least to some degree. And instead, they've completely fallen apart. Now, they're getting further behind. They're selling even less. They can't even get any games out to actually bolster the library of Game Pass. Let's reflect on that year, shall we? Top executives have left with gigantic bonuses. Some of the people, there were leaks that they paid like literally hundreds of millions of dollars to some of the executives that left, who, I mean, objectively on paper seem to have messed up Blizzard pretty bad. So they just paid them all to retire. They have now fired over 2,500 staff in just this year. Only a handful of games have actually been added to Game Pass, forced Xbox to actually alter standard Game Pass. So now Game Pass is now worse. Across the board, basic standard Game Pass has been completely gutted so they can make an expensive extra version of Game Pass to try and trick people into subscribing to it. There's also stuff like Game Pass Ultimate and also the Game Pass price hike. So pretty much every single part of what we thought of as Game Pass has actually gotten worse. Now, according to Microsoft themselves, another part of the Activision Blizzard deal is that repeatedly it came out the fact that Xbox just wants to be Game Pass. That's their entire purpose, is that instead of trying to sell you a console and expensive controllers and lots of games for $70 a pop and downloadable content and expansions and stuff like that, they've pretty much exactly explicitly stated that the plan of Xbox is to only be Game Pass. Game Pass is the entirety of Xbox. They don't care if you play it streaming on your TV or if you play it on your phone or if you play it on a console or your PC. All they care about is Game Pass sales. But in this effort of gutting the service, raising the price, giving us less games, it's ironic that in their effort to make Game Pass better, they've now completely tanked both Xbox and Game Pass. But I wanted to actually end it off with this big post I saw. People are discussing this a lot. Somebody over on Eurogamer essentially spelled out how the last year has been and how this has been sort of an unexpected implosion from Microsoft. But I liked this list of it. So this is all from the article. Eurogamer.net, honestly, they have some very, very good journalists. And they basically point out the fact that they bought them in October. And there was like a 45-day period of kind of figuring things out. Then they started doing firings of all the executives. Starting in January, they started canceling games. Toys for Bob, which was part of it, the people that made the really good Crash Bandicoot 4, they just got spun off. They actually bought their way out of it. They just left Microsoft rather than be under the Xbox umbrella. Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks were shut down. Thankfully, they were later bought by Krafton. Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded, and Pentiment all came to PlayStation 5. Two of these also came to Nintendo Switch. More Xbox games expected to be porting, including Indiana Jones, Diablo 4, and Call of Duty came to Game Pass. Day 1 release and 40 previous titles have been removed from Game Pass's basic tier. Now, the reason I think this is such a good list, I'm glad this person went through the article and kind of itemized it, because I think it shows that bit by bit, month by month, Xbox is getting worse for gamers. The whole selling point of Game Pass has always been, and will always be, it's the best deal in gaming. The idea has always been that originally you'd pay $8 a month or $10 a month for hundreds and hundreds of games, right? But then it became $12 a month, then $15 a month. Now it is $20 a month for some Game Pass games. If you get the lesser tier, you might not be able to play certain versions of certain games. You may not get access to day one Game Pass games, or you may not even get certain Blizzard stuff. Like, this acquisition, I think, has very much left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, because it does seem to have betrayed the promise of Xbox. I mean, it feels like every console is two separate things at once. It's a place to play games. It's a place to play out your third-party stuff. Maybe you have a preference for platform of, oh, I like this controller, or I like achievements more than trophies. But the other part of it is the exclusives. Is that actual promise of, hey, we have this many studios, we have this many projects, we have this much IP, so you're going to get another Fable, another Forza, another Gears of War. And even when those games do look incredibly good, the rate at which new games are coming out on Xbox has become a drip to be kind. It feels like the more money they spend, the less games we get. I don't understand how they've spent now like over $100 billion on acquisitions. And that's a real number, like counting stuff for how much they spent on Activision Blizzard, how much they spent on Bethesda. But pretty much everything they've acquired has gotten worse. And it just feels confusing that this would be possible. When these deals were originally going through, The original promise, the thought about it was that, okay, these creators can do more, can achieve more, can be better if they actually don't have to worry about sales demographics or quarterly reports. If they're owned, they can just focus on the art. I mean, people were even saying that about Starfield. This will be 10 times better than Skyrim because now they're not having to worry about a marketing department or just making vertical slice demos and stuff. Now we can just make games. But Starfield is the lowest rated Bethesda game of all time. People are saying it's the worst thing they've ever touched. Some people say it's the worst game they ever play, but I think those people are being kind of dramatic. But it's weird to think that I do truly believe that beyond just mass layoffs and game price increases, stuff like that, I think the reason this is the death of Xbox is, this is just my theory, and I could be wrong. I think the purchasing of Activision Blizzard got attention from Microsoft for the first time. Before this, it's always been kind of believed that Xbox has been a for funsies project for Microsoft. I mean, according to their own financial reports, they've never really been that profitable. In fact, a lot of times they've been in the red. They're not selling a lot of Xbox games. A lot of third-party stuff is not selling on Xbox, but the mentality has always been that, okay, Microsoft makes enough trillions of dollars off Microsoft Excel and Word and Windows and stuff like that, that for funsies, for our own best benefit, to have an extra piece of tech in your house will also make game consoles. And for a long time, this was very cheap. Xbox 360, the original Xbox, those were made with off-the-shelf computer parts. Project Xenon, Durango, you can look into all that kind of stuff. But as the consoles have become less and less profitable, they've been trying to pay to win. Microsoft has been trying to just buy enough studios to finally catch up, to stop bleeding money. But this $77 billion acquisition, I think a lot of shareholders, a lot of people at the top of Microsoft finally, for the first time, turned the eye of Sauron and actually started to pay attention and said, why are we dumping billions and billions of dollars into a hole and hoping it fills up? How can we possibly actually expect to catch up to PlayStation? And I think that's the reason we're starting to see all these Xbox games come to PS5, to go to Nintendo Switch. The reason that we're starting to see more price increases for Game Pass and less games on Game Pass. I think Microsoft is now actually applying pressure directly to Xbox, saying, get green or die. I have said this a couple times in the last months, but I do think the end of Xbox is very near. I don't think they're even going to last another 5 years. If we get another console, I'll be absolutely shocked. There's rumors of a handheld Xbox. I do believe that will be released, but it's very difficult for me imagining them existing for another console generation. I think Xbox will keep making games. Xbox game studios will exist to some regard. But at this point, if you're Team Xbox, if you're still stacking up achievements and saying Steam sucks, I'm only going to play on Xbox forever, I think it's time to start eyeballing Facebook Marketplace for some cheap secondhand PlayStations. Because it's probably time to abandon ship. But these are just my off-the-cuff thoughts. How do you guys feel about the state of Xbox 1 year after the Activision Blizzard deal? And tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. By the way, some people have been telling me to talk about the Pokemon leaks. I looked at them. They're cool for sure, but I've played a lot of Pokemon games, not really my cup of tea. And also, this is 100% real. There are a lot of stories of like humans doing Pokemon and making human babies and stuff. That stuff is all, PokeTubers, you guys, if you were talking about that, my God, horrible. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.